Welcome back to our student podcast where we try our best to sound like we know what we're talking about, and sometimes we actually do. Today we're bringing together two worlds, the German Renaissance and the Yoruba culture. Even though these cultures are so far apart, they still have some connections.
Alright, so before we jump into Yoruba culture later, we're going to do a quick time travel to Germany between 1400 and 1525, which included lots of drama, lots of incredible art, and lots of artists who probably needed more sleep. Germany during the Northern Renaissance, which lasted from 1400 to 1525, was a place shaped by workshops, cities, and religion. They had so many religious images because religion was a very big part in people's lives during that time. You could find religious art everywhere, whether it was in churches, homes, or even public buildings. Germany was not completely Catholic, but the majority was. A lot of artists created altar pieces, saint sculptures, or painted art pieces. Most of them were used for prayers, so they were not just decoration. This also helped people feel closer to religion. A good example is Tilman Riemschneider. He got hired to make sculptures for the altar pieces for the Holy Blood and Rothenburg. He sculptured Christ and apostles, which were 4 feet high. Religious art was planned, not just random. They also spent a lot of time designing and planning those sculptures. A major change in German culture was printmaking. Also during that time, printed images became common, which could copy art pieces a million times and spread quickly. Dürer created prints of his work so he could get famous outside of Germany. A good example is his rhino image. Before he created it, he actually had never seen a rhino before. His goal was to spread knowledge across Europe. The invention of printmaking was a great thing for the German Renaissance. This way, prints could reach more people, even people who couldn't access art. In Germany, they also had a system called workshops. These workshops created art for patrons and trained artists with different skills. Germans were especially known for great wood sculptures and good craftsmanship. Let us talk about the materials they used. Wood was one of the common materials. It also looked very real after they painted the wood. Germans were interested in nature and emotional art, which you could see in their art pieces, for example, like rabbits, lions, or grasses. This shows how important close observation is. A good artist example is Albrecht Dürer. He created so many art pieces and signed them with AD. Dürer was especially focused on education and art. It was really important for him to show that a good artist isn't just skilled with their hands. There were a lot of exchanges of ideas and techniques between Italy and Netherlands, which shows that Germany had connections with other countries in Europe. Most of the writers were very religious, and some of them even said that religious sculptures or images are not bad. They're only bad if people see them like idols. Last but not least, Germany was known for metalwork and armor. It was slender, symmetrical, and decorative. It also showed national fashion trends. A lot of people see armor as protection, but it also shows power. The more wealthy knights had better armor. This way you could tell which knight has better rank. Over time, the armor changed because of fashion trends. So even a few years back, the fashion trends were a real thing. Obviously, function was still the most important part of armor, but they also wanted the armor to look aesthetic. Most of the suits were custom made.
Since we're looking into Yoruba culture now, we're going even further back in time to 800 to 1400. For the Yoruba kingdoms, there was a lot of focus put on the excellence and beauty they held, often through sculptures and woodworks. Yoruba is a very diverse culture with many different art styles and practices, so it's hard to date exact moments in history for them, but there are instances where we can really see their artistic movements in history. When it was getting started, the Yoruba kingdoms were composed of many different city-states. These places ranged from southwest Nigeria as well as parts of Benin and Togo. This wide population covered around 250 groups, each of them contributing their own unique cultures and traditions, adding to the diversity in the Yoruba arts that we see today. This rich array of arts can be dated back several centuries and hold many different forms, like sculptures, metalworks, textiles, beadwork, and many different architectural elements. They are known mainly for their beautiful wooden sculptures and masks, often used in their rituals. As I've said before, religion plays a fundamental role in the cultural and spiritual life of the Yoruba people. Most Yoruba art is linked to their religious and spiritual practices. These pieces often serve as vessels for divine forces, such as deities, also known as the Orisha. Orisha are believed to oversee or govern the various aspects of both the world and human life. The Orisha were believed to once be humans that achieved their deity level through their good deed or by embodying natural forces. The practice of worshipping these deities are often led by trained priests and priestesses. So these sculptures, masks, and other ritual objects weren't just made to sit there and look pretty, but were used as functional spiritual tools that allowed them to communicate between physical and spiritual realms. As we start to talk about some of their art and style, we begin to get specific with dates. Around 1200 to 1400, they went through a period called the Pavement Era. This was due to them paving certain rectangular areas within the city of Ile-Ife, the capital of the Yoruba at the time, with rows of stone and pottery fragments laid in herringbone patterns. Libations, which were drink offerings poured out for deities or gods, would be poured into vessels in the middle of these paved roads during their rituals. For the Yoruba, the head was associated with knowledge, character, and judgment. So for these rituals, there were also raised platforms that displayed altars that included the heads of divine rulers and other important ancestors. The Yoruba had many different styles, as I've said, and that led to this blend of realism and idealism and the sense of beauty that the Yoruba had in Ile-Ife around 1200. This style developed with the making of terracotta, stone, and wooden heads in the pre-pavement era. These skills would be applied to the creation of their cast metal portrait heads and figures. To achieve this, they would use a method called the lost wax method. This technique involved casting large hollow figures in bronze, brass, and other related alloys. They were able to acquire these materials through trading. These metalworks often showcase a large amount of technical skills. They also showcase a refined understanding of metallurgy and artistic expression. Another one of their many art forms were beadworks and textiles. While the art of making these intricate goods usually falls upon women in most cultures, the men actually help create these goods too. With their beadworks, the beads are used to decorate crowns, hats, bags, and other items often worn by kings and babalawo, which don't know how to say that, so if you figure it out, that's great by me, which is the high priest of the god of divination, Ife. These beaded works are designs with human faces, birds, and flowers. For textiles, weaving is done on different types of looms. Weavers create hundreds upon hundreds of different patterns, often using wild silk and cotton as the material. Their native plant, indigo, is used as a natural dye to color these threads. With how long the Yoruba has been around, they're bound to have inspiration drawn for them. Let me talk with Laura and see if we can get down to the details of it.
Let us take a look at the German Renaissance and their Yoruba culture and let us compare them because it is amazing how they both have religious beliefs, but their artworks are still so different.
That's true. In Yoruba culture, a lot of artwork was connected with the spiritual world or leadership, especially head sculptures, representing a lot of spiritual power.
In Germany, on the other hand, most of their artwork was connected with churches, so Christianity. Artists try to teach religion with pictures. Isn't that crazy?
And the most interesting part, even though both cultures created art which helped people to understand religion, both cultures had a different meaning.
Yes, and art wasn't just decoration. I feel like today people use art almost only as decoration. I always think the pictures at the church look all pretty, but never thought they might actually have a deeper meaning.
Exactly. Both cultures used different materials, but their art was so expressive and was also really important to them.
So, to sum up, both cultures, the German Renaissance and the Yoruba culture, show how humans connected through art with beliefs.
We can see this with the Votary Yoruba sculpture and the shield bearer with the ducal arms of Saxony. While at first it's hard to come across the similarities between the two, you can begin to find small similarities as you look closer. The first thing is that the figures are almost one solid color with pops of color on certain areas. For the Votary Yoruba sculpture, while it's hard to spot, you can see leftover pigment On the figure's wrap, holding her child to her back, there's yellow pigment around the waist area. There's also red and white on the chicken's flesh thing, which I learned is called a wattle. If you didn't know that, now you do. Back on track, there's also a slight color distinction between the figures and the child's hair, where it's more dark brown-black compared to the brown pigment covering it. Either from wear and tear or intentional, there's white patterns on the figures, probably used to show the scarification that often happens in some African cultures. With the shield bearer with the ducal arms of Saxony, besides the intricate and colorful shield, the young man portrayed is covered in mostly white armor. The white armor has these gold accents decorating the lining and bumps of the armor as well as the armor's helmet ridges. There's also a blackish collar around the armor's neck. The figure is clad in this very chic brass skirt, a must-have in the wardrobe. Very subtly, the face of the figure has a red lip going on. The artist also chose to make the eyes of the figure black, which adds to the human feel they were going for. Both showcase a unique stylization of their times with their stylistic use of color. We can also find similarities, with their purposes in religious aspects. The votary Yoruba sculpture, as the name implies, was made as an item of worship to the Yoruba gods. The figure holds the chicken up in offering as it kneels in respect, devotion, and submission. The chicken symbolizes honor and prosperity. While not nearly as overtly religious, the shield bearer with the ducal arms of Saxony has some religious background with its history. Allegedly, Duke George the Bearded, the last Catholic ruler of Aberdeen Saxony, between 1471 and 1539, had commissioned Adolf Dutcher to make an entrance to his chapel, the Messine Cathedral. It had apparently been in a set, topping columns of the entrance. The location of this second one is unknown, however. So while it's not nearly as related to its religion, it still holds some significance. The last thing I can think to point out is how they portray people. While very, and I mean very different, they both present them in natural ways. While the votary Yoruba sculpture goes a bit out of the box, it still shows the natural body of a mother in a way. While her chest isn't sagging, one could imagine in a natural setting how they would sit. She also has a slightly forward-looking figure with large arms and legs. The shield bearer with the ducal arms of Saxony seems to show a young boy. It has a fuller, young-looking face. Another thing is what I describe as baby fat, covering the forearms and legs of the boy. The figure also has baby hands and small feet, adding to the childlike look of it. Overall, it just looks like a little boy holding a shield and wearing armor, just being very natural in his presentation. Now I can finally pass this over to Laura as she talks about the similarities between my sculpture of the head from a figure and her piece, the Lecre bust of Saint Barbara.
Thanks, Abby. Now it's my turn to compare my German artwork to her Yoruba artwork. Let's see what both heads have in common besides, being heads. Both these artworks come from completely different cultures, but both use the head for spiritual identity. My German artwork shows Saint Barbara with a realistic and soft face. The sculpture shows an upper body with a female head. She has brown hair which is falling down on her shoulders in the back and has some structures which symbolizes straight but also kind of wavy hair. On her head is a crown which could symbolize that she has a higher place on the hierarchy. Her face is, like I already mentioned, soft, and it almost looks like she's wearing makeup because her cheeks have a rose touch and her lips are red. Her skin is rather pale, which could symbolize that she should rather be placed inside instead of outside. She's wearing a golden gown and a brown shirt, which has a hole right in the middle of her chest. You might think, why does it have a hole? I did some research for you, and let me tell you, a lot of artworks actually had holes to hold relics. In her left hand, she's holding something red. To be honest, I can barely tell what it is. To me, it looks like a brick. It is actually a tower, which has 3 windows, and each window has a meaning and should symbolize the Holy Trinity. Her right hand is forming a ball-state chirp sign. Chirp, chirp. Especially her hands lost some color, which could mean that a lot of people used to touch her hands, maybe because of prayer. The Yoruba head, on the other hand, uses more stylized forms. The Yoruba figure has bigger eyes, but are still shaped in human form. To me, they do not look real at all. The sculpture has a rather rough texture, and compared to Saint Barbara, it does not look smooth at all. Because of her rough surface, it could express wisdom, but her hair is tied up, which looks like it's tied up into a bun. By looking at her, it looks like she had fuller hair, maybe some kind of afro. Her facial features are almost gone. I can barely tell how her nose or her mouth looked like. Also, her ears are gone. So compared to the German sculpture, this sculpture must have gone through a personal crisis. I am joking. Also, the sculpture has a hole, but this time it's on her forehead. Both sculptures are totally different, but both cultures still have one similarity. Both cultures believe the head was the most important part of a person. The head of a saint in German culture helps worshippers feel close to the divine, whereas the Yoruba culture, the head represents Ori. This is the center of a person's identity, so both artworks communicate something sacred. Both sculptures have eyes which express a lot. The German bust's eyes are softer and more downward. The Yoruba sculpture's eyes are wide. Both sculptures also give a sense of calmness. This expression is important in both cultures. Also, the materials which were used for these sculptures are different. The German sculpture, the St. Barbara bust, was carved from walnut. Afterwards, it got painted with gold, which makes it look holy. The Yoruba head was carved from soapstone. This makes it feel strong, permanent, and matches the Yoruba belief. Those two sculptures are not as different as we think. Both of them play an important ritual role. The German sculpture was used inside a church, whereas the Yoruba head was placed in a shrine to honor a leader's ancestor. So both sculptures have a spiritual meaning. These two artworks also show how each culture creates art differently. The German sculpture is in general more natural, realistic, and has human expressions. This way, St. Barbara looks like a real person, whereas the Yoruba culture creates their artwork differently. They keep their artwork symbolic and not realistic. For example, like I already mentioned, their big eyes. This is very interesting because both sculptures are a head, but are still so different from each other. So, in general, both sculptures seem different, but still share a connection in spiritual meaning, no matter if it's Christian, saint, or the Ori. And that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for sticking with us through the German Renaissance and the Yoruba culture. See you in the next episode, or well, in class.